Was F.W. de Klerk a liberator or a traitor of Afrikaner nationalism? And why did the former president F.W. de Klerk release the late President Nelson Mandela from prison? Did the TRC fully address apartheid-era atrocities? And how is the F.W. de Klerk Foundation helping address South Africa's racial disparities and inequality? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. On 9th December 1982, 42 people, including 30 ANC members, died during a raid by the South African Defence Force members on ANC safe houses in Lesotho's capital, Maseru. This attack was just but one of the many raids carried out on the then-exiled liberation movements by the apartheid government's security forces. However, in what was hailed by the international community as a miracle, Mr. F.W. de Klerk helped initiate a negotiation process that saved the country from possible state of anarchy to a constitutional democracy. My guest today is former President F.W. de Klerk, joining us from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town. Mr. President, hello and welcome to Question Time.
Hello to you, and it's nice to be with you.
Mr. de Klerk, how would you like to be remembered? As a liberator of black South Africans or a traitor of Afrikaner nationalism?
I don't want to write my own epitaph. I would like to be remembered as someone who made a difference, who helped to prevent a catastrophe in South Africa, and who played a leading role together with others, and particularly Nelson Mandela, in bringing about justice for all, hope for all South Africans, and an end to the conflict.
Okay. With that being said, I want us to quickly have a look at this insert.
So help my die drie-enige God, Vader, Seun en Heilige Gees.
As articulated in Madiba's book, The Long Walk to Freedom, the road to a free South Africa was indeed lengthy and daunting. Former President Mr. F.W. de Klerk risked being unpopular by deciding in 1990 to open negotiations for democratic dispensation. Mr. de Klerk's decision to release African National Congress hero Mr. Nelson Mandela from Robben Island and unban all political formations were the cornerstones of a historical shift from apartheid rule to a democratic state. After some vehement opposition and widespread violence, the Convention for Democratic South Africa talks eventually paved the way to historical 1994 elections. In acknowledgement of their unwavering commitment to multi-party democracy, Mr. de Klerk and late President Nelson Mandela jointly received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. Mr. de Klerk is currently heading the F.W. de Klerk Foundation that supports and promotes the country's constitution and Bill of Rights. But did Mr. de Klerk's reforms help eradicate inequality in South Africa?
Mr. de Klerk, somebody may then say that there was no way you were going to make it beyond 1990. Don't you think you succumbed to the firepower that was coming from the liberation movements in order to come up with a reformative process?
No, not at all. From a purely security point of view, the security forces were fairly well in charge with the draconic measures that my predecessor took, and I was part of it in a sense. I was in his cabinet, of putting people in jail without trial, which was wrong, which militated against my feeling for justice. But with all that, there was no risk of military success for the freedom fighters, for the ANC. But both sides, our side and I believe the ANC side, realized that there was no victory in sight through military means and through violence. That the only way in which we could avoid tremendous bloodshed was to start talking to each other. This was led, in a sense, from the ANC side by President Mandela while he was still in jail, and he got permission from the NEC, then the banned NEC, to engage on talks about talks, to have exploratory discussions about the possibility of negotiation. And when I became leader of my party, which was even before I became president, I was immediately then, I didn't know about it until then, I was briefed. And I felt that was the right thing to do. So the decision to release him, but before him to release Governor Mbeki and to release Walter Sisulu and other high-profile prisoners, was all part of a genuine commitment to lay a platform, to lay the foundations for meaningful negotiation.
Okay, now, but would you then say, President Klerk, that you did the ANC a favor by acceding to the negotiations proposals? Because you're saying that in terms of military firepower, you would have knocked the ANC 10 out of 10.
Look, what I did was not to do anybody a favor. What I did was basically driven by my conscience.
Okay.
And that applies to my fellow leaders in the National Party too. By the middle 80s, we realized that we have failed through old policies to bring justice to all South Africans. We have come to the conclusion that apartheid is wrong.
But you were supposed to have known that, Mr. President.
We came to the conclusion that we had to abandon the concept of separateness.
Why did it take you so long?
And embrace the concept of togetherness. And already in '86, the National Party at the Congress did exactly that and embraced a new vision of one united South Africa, with all forms of discrimination to be scrapped, but with a strong constitution and a new South Africa in which there would not be suppression of any one group by another group.
Did you betray the Nationalist Party?
No, I took the National Party with me. I won a white election on a reform platform in '89. I won with 69% of the vote a referendum in 1992, authorizing me to carry on and to take the agreements, the constitutional agreements, through to its logical consequence. Mm-hmm. So a majority of white South Africans stood by me, supported what I was doing, and the National Party became, in the 1994 election, the most non-racial party of all the parties participating at that stage.
But
Only 54% of the whites voted for me. But 66% of coloreds voted for me. 55% of Indians voted for us. And about 500,000 black South Africans voted for the National Party in 1994.
But there are the others. I mean, how do you count even the Indian population, which you had made sure that they were participating in the tricamerals, when actually the majority of the African people were not?
No, this was established through scientific polls. What percentage of which population group voted for us? We did a proper survey after the election so that we knew that we got support from all four, the main population groups, in more or less the percentages that I've given to you.
You have come out in support of the Bantustan system in the past. Do you still believe that it was ideal?
I think if it was implemented in a different way, if the whites didn't want too much land for themselves, if they offered the whole half of KwaZulu-Natal plus Richards Bay, maybe Mr. Buthelezi would have accepted independence. I don't know how history would have gone now, but fact is, it failed. It failed to bring justice to black South Africans. And when we admitted that failure to ourselves, we had to also admit that it was wrong to continue with policies which we realized resulted in injustice to a majority of the people in South Africa. And that was the main driving force for the changes we brought about. In the process, I believe we and Mr. Mandela and the way in which he dealt with the problem together saved hundreds of thousands of lives of young South Africans. And at the end, if they were allowed to die in continuing conflict, we would have to negotiate in any event. So I have no regrets about the main decisions I took. I believe we did the right thing for all South Africans, and we laid a basis for justice. We created hope for all South Africans. We need to work more to achieve equality.
Hold it there, President de Klerk. I want us to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the concept of the new South Africa and perhaps the negotiation process itself. This is Question Time. Please don't go away.
Zoom into Africa. This is Burundi. The president is Mr. Pierre Nkurunziza. Burundi got independent from Belgium on 1st July in 1962. The population is more than 8 million people. One of Burundi's major languages spoken is French. Monetary unit is Burundi franc.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Our guest today is former State President F.W. de Klerk. He joins us from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town. Now, Mr. de Klerk, welcome back to the show. Now, then came the release of Nelson Mandela and the unbanning of other political formations, which then opened the way for the negotiation process to start. You didn't trust each other at that point.
We started building trust. That was our starting point. When we first met after his release, an ANC delegation under his leadership, a National Party government delegation under my leadership at Grote Schuur, we agreed that we should first find what do we agree about. And that first meeting laid the foundation of building trust between us. And throughout the negotiations, except for the periods of interruption, the approach was to make that list of things we agree upon longer by negotiated agreements and to reduce the list of things on which we still differed. Until right at the end, there were only 9 or 10 points. And Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and Mr. Roef Meyer came to me and Mr. Mandela and said, now you are the leaders, these are the outstanding points, we need to reach agreement and the normal negotiation process can't resolve this.
Now,
and in a long meeting between the four of us, we really settled those 9 points through a process of give and take, through a process of accommodation of each other's main concerns and core interests. We reached agreement and we finalized it late 1993.
Who did you not want in the ANC negotiation team?
No, it wasn't for me to prescribe.
Yeah, but there are certain individuals you are not comfortable with.
We composed our own people. I was never comfortable with radical communists in my life. I'm still not comfortable with them.
I want names.
I'm not comfortable with the National Democratic Revolution.
Give me names, President de Klerk.
Which some people within the ANC still propagate. No, there was no particular individual. Let me say, one communist who made a wonderful contribution to the negotiations was the late Joe Slovo. He was a clever man. He understood the need for give and take, and I think he played a constructive role on the ANC side in the negotiations. I didn't have an aversion to anybody or a very negative reaction towards anybody in their negotiation team.
Okay. Now, during the talks, you remember that unfortunate scene where the AWB stormed the trade center to disrupt the negotiation process. Were you there on that particular day?
Yeah. No, I wasn't there, but I obviously followed it. And as president, it was reported to me in great detail, and I was kept fully informed at all times.
So one would be correct, President de Klerk, to say you actually failed to effectively deal with the AWB, because no matter what you could have done at that time, they still managed to operate in the radical manner that they did, and with disdain, actually.
Well, the acid test would be, did they succeed in their goals to prevent agreement being reached? No, they failed. We did reach agreement, and good agreement.
They also destabilized the country.
Succeed in their goal to prevent a free and fair and peaceful election to take place? The answer is no, they failed. We did have a free and fair and peaceful election. They are no longer a factor, and even at the election date, they were no longer a factor.
They bombed a lot of places leading to those elections, even on the election day.
There was very few violent accidents or incidents on election day. Overall and overwhelmingly, it was peaceful, and in the aftermath of the election and in the new South Africa, this group of radical, aggressive Afrikaner nationalists and racist nationalists are no longer a meaningful factor at all.
Okay. What was your take when Chris Hani was murdered?
I was at a family festival of my one grandmother called Van Rooy in the middle of the Karoo. And I was called away from the lunch and informed of what has happened to the police station. I immediately established contact with Mr. Mandela. I immediately issued a statement, but I realized that only he, as the leader of the ANC, with his moral structure, could prevent this incident from from getting out of hand in any way whatsoever.
But President de Klerk, Mr. Mandela had told you, had requested you to beef up Chris Hani's security.
No, I can't recall anything like that at any stage I received such a request. If I did, I surely would have done it, so I don't have anything like that in my recollection.
Well, your foot soldiers and the gentleman who was in charge of the police would have, I suppose, brought the matter to your attention, because indeed President Mandela did request that Chris Hani's security needs to be beefed up.
It was never reported to me, and I never played a role in that specifically.
Okay, we'll talk about Boipatong when we return, but also what your foundation is doing to ensure social cohesion here in South Africa. This is Question Time. Please don't go away.
Warm welcome to you at home. This is Afro Showbiz News, the show that brings you all things art and entertainment from around the African continent.
Tunisian rapper Ben Ahmed, better known as Clay BBJ, has been released after spending 2 weeks in prison. The arrest came after he was accused of insulting security and violating public morals.
The songs sung by the artists criticized the current situation in Tunisia. That's Afro Showbiz. Catch us every Saturday evening at 7:30.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Our guest today is former State President F.W. de Klerk, joining us from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town. Now, Mr. President, welcome back. And there you were.
Thank you.
Not allowed to even walk or set foot on Boipatong because the people believed that you had a hand in the butchering of those people of Boipatong. Do you consider yourself to have blood on your hands?
I was unfairly accused of that. Government forces were unfairly accused of that. The TRC tried its best to blame us for it. They failed. In an independent court case, it was found that it was an attack by Inkatha activists and that the government's hands were clean on Boipatong.
Where were the government's hands not clean?
The government hands were not clean in every respect. The Truth Commission has successfully succeeded in showing up how many gross violations of human rights elements in the security forces were guilty of.
Okay.
And the people were brought to book, and some of them applied for amnesty, and the Truth Commission did a good work in dealing with the amnesty. What the Truth Commission did not do is they did not get to the bottom of necklace murders. They did not get to the bottom of the 400 Inkatha senior people who were assassinated in cold blood.
Yeah, but they also did not
deal effectively
President
with black on black violence.
Hold it there. But they also did not get down to know what happened to an MK operative called Miss Melanie in Mpumalanga.
No, I accept that. They did not have 100% success. But fact is that 90% of their energy and efforts were concentrated on the security forces.
Because the security forces are the ones that made, who accounted rather for the biggest chunk of atrocities. You have just said it yourself that you couldn't be meshed.
That's a question of opinion. They were involved in numerous gross violations of human rights. I supported the establishment of the commission. I gave my cooperation to the commission. But they were concentrated, they were unbalanced in the sense of concentrating much too much almost only on security force transgressions, and did not pay sufficient attention and focused attention to other forms of gross violations of human rights by the ANC, by Inkatha, and by other elements.
Okay, hold the thought there. I want us to just quickly have a look at this clip.
The Constitution is a transformational document in itself. The Constitution sets as a goal that there should be equality for all. The Constitution says that while as a departure point there shall not be discrimination, that certain forms of discrimination can be regarded as acceptable in order to rectify the wrongs of the past. So to be anti-constitutional and to try and say the Constitution is blocking the way to transformation of the society is absolutely and simply not true. One must note that it is actually increasing very fast. That the black share of the economy in South Africa has grown exponentially and fairly dramatically, even before 1990, but specifically also so also since 1994. But having said that, I think serious mistakes were made, for instance, in the form of unbalanced affirmative action. We need affirmative action. But if it becomes unbalanced, and if it becomes really a new form of institutionalized racial discrimination, it's unacceptable and unconstitutional.
Now, Mr. de Klerk, I think we agree as South Africans that the country is facing a lot of challenges. There's a lot of inequality. Do you also agree that this inequality actually find its roots from the system of apartheid and segregation, which ensured that people are unequal?
Yes.
Okay.
It is for that reason. I accept it.
Okay.
It is for that reason that I helped to negotiate a transformational constitution. It is for that reason that what I said in the clip had to be said. It is for that reason that I say I do support balanced affirmative action and balanced black economic empowerment. But the biggest failure, the biggest factor feeding continued inequality is the failure of our education and training system, which has not improved in the past 20 years.
Yes, but don't you think it would really take some time, Mr. de Klerk?
have actually said is as bad or worse than it was before 1994. The biggest failure is the creation of jobs, is addressing successfully our high unemployment figure, unacceptably high unemployment figure. If we improve the quality of our education and training, if we create the jobs, then we will make great strides in reducing continuing inequalities and in bringing hope and opportunity into the lives of millions of people.
Do you agree that the current government has actually created more jobs than yours?
In the civil service, yes, but they're losing jobs in the private sector. They're losing jobs in that part of the economy which can contribute to economic growth, and economic growth can contribute towards the creation of more jobs through better investment in South Africa. Just increasing the civil service and creating jobs that way means the taxpayer must pay more. The salaries in the civil service are now higher than the salaries in the private sector. So I don't think it was healthy job creation under the government. It's unhealthy job creation. We don't need an overblown civil service. We need an effective, professional civil service, and we need dynamic growth and new factories being built, new mines being opened, new investments being made in new ventures. That is what in 10 and 20 and 30 years will benefit all South Africans most.
President Klerk, I thank you very much for the time, and we wish you good health, and may you live as long as the God Almighty blesses you to live.
Thank you. And I enjoyed being with you and to share with a few thoughts with your listeners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was question time for today. A big thank you to our guest, President F.W. de Klerk. Our email address, questiontime@sabc.co.za, or you can tweet us. Our Twitter handle is @questiontime24. From me and the rest of the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.